Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie and welcome to a morning with Maddie. Yes, I'm currently still in my pajamas. I'm drinking my coffee. No, it is not technically morning, but this is the time that I wake up. So, for me, it is morning. Today, I'm going to be giving you 20 bookish facts about me, and I'm going to try and keep it short and concise, but some of these I feel like I just know I'll probably go on a rant. Then I feel like some of them need actual discussion. Let's just get into the facts. I started reading at age 5, and I started reading off of the Dick and Jane books. I don't remember who they're by. I think they're by an American author, but I could be wrong. Basically, they're these picture books with very short sentences with only like 2 or 3 words per sentence, and it teaches kids how to read. And they're about these 2 siblings named Dick and Jane and their dog Spot. They're really cute. If you're trying to teach your child to read, I do recommend those. Speaking of my childhood in reading, my favorite books when I was a little bit older and I started reading chapter books, my favorite series were the Magic Tree House books and the Junie B. Jones books. I don't really remember anything about Junie B. Jones, but I do still have all of the Magic Tree House books that I owned as a kid. I still have them. I have since reread them and I still love them. So they have stood the test of time for me. And then when I got a little bit older, somewhere around 5th and 6th grade, my favorite books were Black Beauty and The Phantom Tollbooth, which I just recently reread The Phantom Tollbooth, and that's another one that stands the test of time. In fact, it actually gets better the older you get because it's just mind-blowing. There is so much symbolism and things that you don't really quite understand when you're a child, and you have to be more mature and you have to be an adult to be able to look back on it and be like, wow, that is genius. And then when I got a little bit older, when I was in high school, I believe I was 15, I read Twilight, and it's one of those things where I didn't read anymore. Like, my reading life was non-existent. I thought reading was dumb because all my friends thought reading was dumb, so I just stopped reading. But it was summer, I was home alone, I was bored, I was tired of watching TV because I think I had been binging Cake Boss on Netflix, and I think I had watched like 100 episodes in a row, and like I was just so tired of TV at that point. I wanted something else to do. I think I was like cleaning or something, and I found a box in one of our closets that we just had never unpacked from when we moved, and it contained the Twilight books, which technically are my brother's. I guess I own them now. My name's on them, but they're technically my brother's. He is 4 years older than me, and he is not the type of person at all who would like Twilight. But back in the day, when Twilight first came out, it was all the rage. All of his friends were reading it, and he wanted to be a part of it. So he read them, and he actually liked them back then, I think. Anyway, he had them, I read them, and I fell in love. I read the first 2 books within 24 hours. And then I think I finished the series within 4 or 5 days. And those books are pretty large, and for me, being a non-reader at the time, like, this was life-changing for me, honestly. Speaking of Twilight, I was Team Jacob, and you know, I want to say I'm still Team Jacob to this day, but at this point, I really just don't care. Also, the things that happen in Breaking Dawn, without spoiling it, like, not really comfortable with Jacob anymore, but I still love his character, and I definitely preferred him with Bella than Bella with Edward. Let's be real, y'all. Like, Edward can be romantic, but he's also a creepy stalker, and he watches her sleep, and I'm not okay with that. High school me thought that was completely romantic. No. If you like a girl, don't stalk her. Don't watch her sleep. That's creepy, not romantic. And then the first books I read after Twilight, I think it was several months later, maybe even a year later, I read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare and fell in love. And the actual fact that I'm supposed to be saying right now is that that is my most read book, along with Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Just the first book in the Percy Jackson series, because I have read that book so many times on accident, y'all. Like, I love that series, don't get me wrong, but I read it when I was really little. I forgot that I had read it, and like I didn't remember it at all. And then I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and I picked it up, and I was like, oh, this looks like a cool book. I read it, and like it was vaguely familiar, but I definitely like had read it before and just forgotten that I had read it. And then after I read it in 5th or 6th grade, whenever it was, I forgot that I read it again and then reread it in high school. And like, I thought it was a book that I had never read before. I started reading it and I was like, why do I know what's about to happen next? And then it dawned on me that I'd already read that book twice. So, and then of course I've reread it since then on purpose because I like the series. It's all a big mess. Sorry if I just confused the crap out of you. Sorry. While we're on the subject of Rick Riordan, I don't really care for the Magnus Chase books. And I know people love the Magnus Chase books, like all the popular booktubers, like when they first came out, they were saying that they loved those books even more than the Percy Jackson books. And I just strongly disagree. Like, I like the Norse mythology, but I'm not very familiar with it, and it was very confusing when I first tried to read those books. And I just didn't really understand any of it. It was just way too confusing for me at the time, and I just didn't have it in me to invest in the brain power that it would take to understand them. I wasn't invested in the storyline. I wasn't invested in the characters. There's nothing particularly wrong with the characters. They're just, I don't connect with them. There's nothing particularly likable about them to me. They're just not Percy Jackson and the gang. They're just not. It took me a few months to get through the first book. I started on the second book. Only made it halfway through, still haven't finished it. I bought the third book, and obviously I haven't read that one either. Scarlet and Wolf are my favorite characters in the Lunar Chronicles. I love all the Lunar Chronicles characters, but there's something about Scarlet and Wolf that I just love. Like, I really can't explain it. I just like them more than the other characters. I need to reread that series to see if my opinion is still the same. And this next one may confuse some people, may ruffle a little bit of feathers, but when I first read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, it wasn't that great. It was mediocre. It was fine. I didn't really like the characters. The plot was kind of boring, to be honest. And I know that's kind of confusing because it's one of my favorite series. Sarah J. Maas is my favorite author. But there's just something about the first book that's just not that great. And it's weird because the second book is probably my favorite book of all time. And I like the first book now, but it's mostly because of the second book and the characters that grew on me that I even like the first book now. Does that make any sense? I was Team Adrian in Vampire Academy. I know, way back in the day, and by back in the day I mean probably like 6 years ago, I was Team Adrian. I thought Adrian was a better love interest than Dimitri. Dimitri was just too old for the main character, and by too old I mean, yes, he is a few years older than the main character, but his just personality and his demeanor felt more mature than the main characters, and like they just didn't mesh well. They had their cute moments that I liked, but overall I preferred the main character with Adrian. I haven't finished the Harry Potter series. I love Harry Potter. I am a Harry Potter fan. I consider myself to be a Harry Potter fan anyway, and I have only watched all of the movies. I have not read all of the books, and that is because I cannot make it through the books without getting in a reading slump. I have read the first 2 books. Both of those put me in reading slumps. I have tried to read the third book and I made it about halfway and it put me in a reading slump, and like, I know I will love the later books because they become more mature, and you know, the beginning of the series is more children middle grade and then it grows into young adults, and I know that I will like the later books. But these first books, I just, like, yes, the characters are the same, but there's something about them that just puts me in reading slumps, and because of that reason I'm scared to try and pick up the rest of the books and try to read them because I don't want to be in reading slumps. My favorite short story of all time is A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. This story is so unique, so amazing. If you have never heard of it, please look it up. Please read it. You just gotta go into this story pretty much blind. Basically, the gist of the story though is there is this old woman who is a shut-in. She never really comes out of the house. Like, a lot of people have never even seen her, but she's always lived in the same house, on the same street, and only the older people in the town actually remember when she was young and she actually left the house. Basically, way back in the day, she had this boyfriend and something happened between them. He left town, and ever since, she hasn't been able to leave the house. And I will say, without spoiling it, it is kind of a mystery. So go into it blind as much as possible. My favorite dystopian, back in the day when I first, started reading, my favorite dystopian was Delirium by Lauren Oliver. And like, I still have fond memories of reading that series. I don't really remember much of what happened, So, I mean, it's time for me to give it a reread to see how my opinions and thoughts on it would change, but it definitely was my favorite. If you don't know what this is about, basically love has become a disease and the government has tried to eradicate love by making people, when they turn 16, they have to undergo a procedure that removes their ability to love, and then the government dictates who they marry, you know, their children, all of that stuff. But the main character, before she turns 16, she ends up falling in love with someone, and I'm sure you can kind of guess the rest. I don't like bookmarks, and like, people don't understand why, but let me tell you why I hate bookmarks. You have to pull them out of your book. You have to set them down. And then you have to remember where you set them down. You have to remember to put them back in the book. And honestly, I pretty much just read in bed, and I lose the bookmark in the bed, and then like I'll find it a couple days later in the bed covers, and I'm like, oh, there's the bookmark that I lost 5 days ago. And so they're pretty much pointless for me anyway. I'd rather just remember the page that I was on, and I'm usually pretty good at that. And if I ever feel like I can't remember the page that I'm on, I'll just put it in my updated progress in Goodreads, and then I can always go back and check to see which page I was on. Makes life so much easier for me. I used to wait until a series was completely finished before I started reading the series. I used to be a complete, total binger. If I started a book and liked it, I had to read the next book, and then the next book, and then the next book, because I was just completely consumed in the story, and I couldn't do anything else. I would literally wake up, read from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed, and then start the same thing the next day until I finished an entire series. And while we're on the subject of series, I think now I prefer duologies. I still like trilogies, I still like series, but with my schedule, I'm a full-time student, I have a full-time job right now, and I have a life, so reading, binging a full series just isn't in the cards for me right now, and I usually have the time to put into reading 2 books. So duologies are kind of perfect for this season of my life right now. I am a sucker for a good romance. I don't care what genre it is. If it has a romance and I like the romance, if I like the main love interest, I'm probably gonna like the book. That's just how it is for me. I'm just a huge sucker for romance. Give me a cute couple. Give me a love interest like William Herondale. Give me a love interest that says amazingly romantic things like Khalid. You have me hooked. I am a 100% mood reader. I'm talking about my reading mood will change multiple times throughout the day. So I may start reading a book in the morning, and maybe 2 hours later, I don't feel like reading a book in that genre anymore. So then I'll go and pick up another book of the genre that I'm in the mood for, and then maybe I'll read that for the next 4 or 5 hours, and I'll be out of the mood for that genre, and then I'll go to a different book. So I'm usually reading at least 4 or 5 books at a time, and by that I mean like actively reading 4 or 5 books. I own over 200 books that I have not yet read. Yes, you heard me correctly. And if you have watched my bookshelf organization video, you know that all of the books behind me, I'm talking about this shelf, is pretty much completely full of books. These are all of my TBR books. And the last fact is, I prefer paperbacks over hardbacks. If you look at these shelves, most of these I feel like are paperbacks, especially the ones that you can't see in the frame. They're pretty much all paperbacks. I will only purchase hardbacks if they are the only ones available, because publishers for some reason like to only release books in hardbacks, and then you have to wait half a year for the paperback edition to be released, and it infuriates me. So that is usually the only time I will actually buy a hardback, is if the paperback is unavailable and I cannot wait to purchase it. Or sometimes, like on Book Outlet, if I find a hardback for like $3 and it's not available in paperback on the site, I'll just go ahead and buy the hardcover, because it doesn't really matter to me. I know it's weird that I prefer paperbacks, but that's just how it is. Alright, those are 20 bookish facts about me. Thank you for spending this morning with me. If it's not morning for you, oh well. Thank you for watching anyway. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more bookish content by me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.